What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 17 of Let's Be Frank with your friendly neighborhood bull, Frank Mattis, brought to you by the Old City Sports Network. Happy Monday, and I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I did, being with friends, family, the girlfriend, lots of good stuff. I enjoyed my time off from work, and I hope you all did the same. A lot of things to get into today. The Eagles arguably pick up their biggest win of the season against the Ravens as they out tough the Ravens to a very big victory on the road in Baltimore. The Flyers are red hot. They've won 3 straight games. And I will talk a little college football as my Michigan Wolverines take down the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes in one of the biggest upsets in the history of that great rivalry. So let's talk about the Eagles. A lot's been said during this winning streak prior to this Ravens game. At that point, it would be 7 wins. Who did they really beat? There was a lot of Browns, Giants, Jaguars, the Cowboys without Dak, the Bengals who have just a terrible defense despite having a great offense. The Rams are middle of the road, the Commanders are frauds. A lot's been said that the Eagles haven't beaten anybody. Well, you can't say that anymore because they get a huge win against a Super Bowl contender in the Baltimore Ravens, a very huge victory for them, a victory that, even last week on this pod, I was like, I could see them losing this game, because the Ravens are a really good team. And when they're on, Lamar and Derrick Henry specifically, they're really tough to beat. And, I wouldn't have been shocked if they lost this game, but they won, and they won pretty handedly. And this defense, man, they just keep doing it week in and week out. There's no question that this defense is for real. They have gone up against all different types of offenses with all different types of quarterbacks. They doesn't matter what you do, you could run the ball, throw the ball, doesn't matter who your receivers are. This defense is game, and this defense is for real. Despite allowing 372 yards and 24 first downs, they pretty much kept this Baltimore offense in check. It was sort of a bend don't break effort. They made plays when they needed to and to force field goal opportunities. Obviously, Justin Tucker's continues to struggle, and it seems like his best is behind him, and that's going to be something that Baltimore is going to have to look at as they go into the postseason because special teams are huge. He's been Mr. Reliable. He's been arguably one of the best kickers I've ever seen in my lifetime. But he seems to have the yips, and by forcing them to kick field goals as opposed to allowing touchdowns was huge, and that's exactly what the Eagles wanted to do. This was a great effort defensively. Some of those yards, as I pointed out, the 372. Obviously, late in the game, Lamar had a big run, so the stats were a little bit inflated when the game was out of hand. Credit to the defense. They just continue to get better. The usual suspects, Jalen Carter, Zach Bond, Kenyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. I mean, what is there to say? These guys are playing at an elite level. You have two really good rookie standout cornerbacks that are going to be a mainstay in this defense and on this team for many years to come. They just continue to do their job. And it's beautiful to watch. I mean, that tackle by Cooper DeJean is just a thing of beauty. I mean, this defense just continues to fly around at a high level. They continue to be where they need to be, and it's beautiful to watch. And all 3 levels, D-line, linebacking core, secondary, they all play great. Jalen Carter is just an absolute game wrecker. The guy, I don't know how he fell to us at 9. I mean, you got to be kicking yourselves for not drafting this kid. This kid is an absolute beast. When he's focused, he's dialed in, and he doesn't freelance. He's unblockable, and some of the Baltimore Ravens offensive linemen's got away with some holds, and I don't blame them. Because that's the type of guy he is. He's going to wreck your game, and you know he's just he's been fantastic, and I still don't know how he fell to 9. Zach Bond continues to make plays, you know, throughout the game. Just a tremendous player. That blitz that he had that forced the field goal opportunity was huge. The guy's just been incredible. And like I've been saying all year long, you got to pay the man. I don't care if you got to pay, $11 million, whatever the number is. If you got to pay $1 more, $1 million more because a team wants to pay him. you gotta keep him. You gotta keep him because the guy has been, a revelation at that position. Some guys that I've been critical of on the defensive side of the ball that I want to give love to, and that's Chauncey Gardner Johnson. I was very critical early on in the season. If you're going to talk trash, you better back it up. I raked him over the coals specifically for the Buccaneers game, but these last couple games at a high level, and it's good to see. And I have no problem if he's going to talk smack. If he's gonna lay the boom and he's going to be consistent, I have no problem with it. The team feeds off of that, and he creates vibes, the good vibes, positive vibes, because of it, and the team resonates with that, and they kind of feed off of that. So I have no problem with his performance over the last 3 games. I think he's been playing at a very high level. Jordan Davis has had back-to-back good games. That's going to be key, obviously, with Brandon Graham down. And if Jalen Carter needs a rest, he needs to step up. He's been primarily just a run stopper, but these last couple games he's been playing at a high level, and he'll definitely get more snaps. So I'm very impressed by him. Um, Guys like Nolan Smith and Jalex Hunt really showed up in this game. They played very well. That's going to be key with Brandon Graham being out, and I really like what I see from those guys. Nolan Smith's been having a really good year. And, Jalex Hunt is getting more and more snaps. He got half a sack on that blitz from Zach Bond. So he'll definitely get more snaps. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from him. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from this defense overall. Just a tremendous job. Reed Blankenship got banged up, got a concussion in the game. We'll see, what his health is down the line. But it's good knowing that the other safety position, the other guy at the other safety position is playing at a high level, and Chauncey Gardner Johnson, who I was critical of, and a lot of people were critical of, but he's playing consistent football, and he brings a swagger to that team. And when he's playing well, the team's playing well. It's a really tough defense to go up against. I mean, just a tremendous job by these guys. I mean, Vic Fangio to me he has to be the front runner for assistant coach of the year. I mean, it's night and day from last year, and any Eagles fan could tell you that. I mean, you talk about a defense that would just give up a ton of yards and would just give up touchdowns at the worst spot. They didn't tackle well. They gave too much of a cushion. But if they do give up yards, they don't give up a lot of touchdowns. So again, credit to this defense. Just tremendous performance by them. Against a high potent offense. Lamar didn't look all that great throughout the game. I mean, his numbers are definitely inflated. He was 23 of 36 for 237 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 8 carries for 79 yards, but that was when the game was out of hand when he got some of those yards. They kept him contained. They didn't allow him to, break off big plays. When he got pressured, especially when he was in his own end zone, he missed some throws. He just didn't seem like Lamar Jackson, like that we're all accustomed to. And that's credit to the defense. They put pressure on him and they got him flustered, and he wasn't the same Lamar Jackson that we're accustomed to seeing. So again, great job by the defense. The Eagles offense, a slow start, again, but they always finish strong. Saquon Barkley, the front runner of the MVP, who won the battle of the running backs between him and Derrick Henry. Though Derrick Henry had a good game, he had 82 yards rushing, but they kept him out of the end zone. So Barkley obviously got the better between the two great running backs. And to me, he's still my MVP, and he is the best closer in all football. When he's running downhill in the fourth quarter and you got that Eagles offensive line, breathing down your neck and getting the better of you, it's a really tough team to beat. This is the formula going forward, and it's the formula that's been working. And, it sucks that we can't, impose our will early on in the game, but, it's sort of like a chess match. It's sort of like, Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, if you watch boxing, in his prime, he would take rounds off to kind of like, feel their opponent out. And then once he started to get good reads, then he would take over fights, and he was hard to beat. And obviously he went on to be undefeated at 50-0. So that's kind of the um, analogy with this Eagles offense. They kind of start off slow, get their feet wet, kind of see some things, and then impose their will as the game gets later. Just great job finishing strong by the Eagles offense with Saquon Barkley and that O line. Um, Serious question: who can guard AJ Brown? Anyone? I mean, this guy. I mean, you want to talk about having a appropriate nickname of always open, because this guy is always open. He's not just, you look at him and you look at his physicality, you think he's just a guy who can just win one-on-one balls, but he's just very smooth in terms of his route running. He can run any route. It's really hard to stop this guy. I mean, he is an absolute beast, and I don't think there's a corner in this league that can cover him. I don't know. I don't care if it's Sauce Gardner, and I don't even know if the guys on our team can stop him. And that's probably why he's so good, because he gets good work against Kenyon and Cooper DeJean and all those other guys on the team. But AJ Brown just, he's always open, and you could not have a more appropriate nickname for that guy. Dallas Goedert, I thought, had a really nice game. That touchdown pass from Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, was a thing of beauty. He came up big on some third downs, getting him more and more involved. With Smitty out, hopefully Smitty can come back. Is going to pay dividends, because when you think of Barkley, you think of AJ, and then you think of Goddard when he's healthy, he can be a top 5 tight end, and he proved that yesterday. So credit to him. And Jalen Hurts, just managing the game, really have to do a ton. But towards the end of the first half, he looked very smooth. He was very surgical in terms of his arm and his legs, in terms of moving the chains and getting us on top going into the half. Credit to him. He doesn't have to do a ton, because you have Barkley and you have a lot of other guys, but and this is kind of a defensive team when you think about it. And I'd not have that on my bingo card going into 2024. This is real. This winning streak has been built off the back of our defense. It's not to say the offense is great. Obviously, Saquon's the MVP, but you know, in my opinion, but this defense, man, there's a real story here. And Jalen Hurts doesn't have to do a lot. When you run the ball effectively, especially late in games, and you play great defense, play good special teams. Braden Mann had a great game. Five great punts, all inside the 50-yard line. I mean, just a tremendous job, by him. So, or no, it was 6 total punts. My apologies, but he had 5 that were inside the 20-yard line. Really good game by him. When you got to win the field position battle against a team like Baltimore, and like I mentioned before, Lamar was kind of tentative when he was, in his own end zone, and that's, when we got a little pressure on him, he was not, the same Lamar Jackson. So, when you punt the ball, and put it in, in a bad spot for the other team, in imposing territory, that's what you want, and the defense thrived off of that. So, Jalen Hurts really doesn't have to do a ton. I think that's good. I think it's good long term. A lot of people say, well, he doesn't have the passing numbers that wow you. And honestly, I don't, if it's not broken, why try to fix it with this philosophy? I think that you know, he's been fine, and he doesn't need to, you know, be this guy that has to put the cape on, and I think with not exposing him to hits and letting Barkley kind of do his thing, I think down the line, sort of like in 2022 in that Super Bowl, he can kind of do his thing if he has to. If he has to put the cape on, I have no problem with that. And the less on his plate, the better. You obviously paid him a lot of money. You would think in theory, he would be the guy to lead this team, but you got to ride the hot hand. And, if it's not broken, why try to fix it? Tremendous job late in the game by the offense to do what they do. And they got the W in Baltimore, and that's big. And now I propose the question to you guys. Do you think the Eagles are the best team in football? Because I do. Um, I thought Detroit looked shaky on Thanksgiving. I don't know how in the world Chicago got back in that game. They're very lucky they had an inept coach, and a rookie quarterback late in the game to just completely implode like that. Just when you have a timeout and you just let the clock run, and there's no sense of urgency. I mean, that is just head coaching malpractice, and obviously Matt Eberflus lost his job because of it. Um, but overall, I mean, I was just not that impressed by Detroit. I'm surprised Chicago was able to hang around like they did. Defensively, I think the Eagles are clearly a better team. So I, I would put the Eagles right now over Detroit from what I saw. I am not at all impressed by Kansas City. They win another dogfight against an inferior team at home. That's just and then they obviously got that fumble recovery late in the game. So it's like one of those things where, I mean, how good are they? They are going to get healthier. They did get Pacheco back. It looks like they're going to get Hollywood Brown back. Um, so that will probably help them. But as of right now, I'm just not really impressed by the Chiefs. And the team that beat the Chiefs, who looked good last night, was Buffalo. And I would say they're probably the second best team from what I've seen because the NFL is a week to week league. But I just don't think that they have the talent the Eagles have. The Eagles have dudes at every single position group, and Buffalo really doesn't. But they're playing at a high level, and Josh Allen's incredible. So, to me right now, I think it's between Barkley and Allen for MVP. So that should be very interesting. But other than that, I don't see another team that's better than the Eagles. I think the Eagles are the best team in the NFL right now. They're playing great in all three phases of the game, and they did it against one of the best teams in Baltimore. Offensively, defensively, special teams, they're pretty elite, and the teams, there's good vibes in that locker room, something that there wasn't last year, and that's very important. You see on social media, I mean, the guys are having a great time, and I've been very critical of Nick Sirianni, and there's been a lot of questions as to what exactly does he do as the head coach, and I think it's maintaining positive energy. And I've said it multiple times. I think this is a Howie Roseman led operation as opposed to Nick Sirianni led operation. But at the very least, I think you know if he's going to keep the vibes up, I mean, I can't really complain. And you kind of let your coordinators do their thing. I have no issue with that. So credit to Nick Sirianni for you know kind of flipping the narrative when they're coming from the bye, and obviously that whole debacle in the Browns game. He's pretty much turned it around. He's turned his team around, and there's a positive energy in that locker room, and these guys are feeding off of each other, and it's very reminiscent of the last two Eagles teams that have been to the Super Bowl. So credit to Nick Sirianni for keeping the vibes up, and I think that going forward, I think that's going to play into our advantage because our schedule pretty much lightens up. You do have some key games. You have Steelers coming up, but their next game, if you look at their schedule, right? They have a very winnable game against the Panthers. Though the Panthers are playing better, and I wouldn't sleep on them. I think Bryce Young, has resurrected his career. It's a very short career, but nonetheless, he's proven that he can be a franchise quarterback. And it looks like they're building towards something. But the Eagles clearly are the better team. They just have better talent, and they're at home. And they are where they're just playing. Are, like I said, the best team in football. Regardless of how good they are, they should beat them handedly. And then the next week they play the Steelers, who they have a new lease on life with Russell Wilson. Obviously Mike Tomlin, year in and year out, despite everyone expecting them to fall off, they just always find a way to play consistent football. They're one of the best organizations in all of football. Their defense is tremendous, but I think Eagles have a little bit more juice, especially offensively. Defensively, they're two of the best teams in the NFL, so that should be interesting. And then at the Commanders, the Commanders had a nice bounce back win against the Tennessee Titans yesterday. Granted, it is the Tennessee Titans, but at least the Tennessee Titans can play good defense, and they couldn't stop a nosebleed yesterday. So that's, for the Commanders' sake, that's a good sign. But then the Eagles finish off the season with the Cowboys and Giants, two W's. I mean, really, when you think about it, I mean, you have at least three W's between the Panthers, Cowboys, and Giants in theory. So that puts you to 13 and 2. But then the really tough games are the Steelers and the Commanders, and I think the Eagles are better than those two teams. The Eagles already beat the Commanders, and the Steelers, really to me are the toughest test. I just think the Eagles have better players and they're at home. So It's going to be very interesting down the line, but I think the Eagles, because if the Lions lose on Thursday against the Packers, they're no longer the number one seed. So, um, for the moment, it would be the Eagles, and then obviously if the Vikings win, and they're in the mix as well. So there's going to be a lot of interesting football down the line. I mean, you look at a team like the Lions. Let's look at their schedule. Um, because they're right now the one seed. So they obviously have to play the Packers, which at home, but that's not going to be an easy game. Packers are good, and then they got to play the Buffalo Bills, which should be a great game. And the Buffalo Bills are red hot, so those two games are really tough. They're at Chicago in the cold. Who knows? Usually now that they have an interim coach, and I believe it's Thomas Brown. It was the interim OC. Now they're um, they obviously played well against the Lions. We'll see what happens there. Then they're at San Fran. San Fran seems like they're dead in the water, but that AFC, or excuse me, that NFC West is pretty wide open. They're pretty all those teams are pretty close to one another. If they're in the mix, that's obviously going to be a tough game. And then they finish off the seasons with the Vikings. So they got some tough battles to get, really tough games. Vikings, Bills, Packers, at the Bears and the Colts, not a gimme. And then at the 49ers, who knows where there are. So none of those games are gimmies compared to the Eagles. So the Eagles have a very clear pathway to getting the one seed. And if they keep playing the way that they're playing, they're going to get that one seed. So shout out to the Eagles on a huge win, their biggest win of the year. And I think they're the best team in football. I really do. I think, the Lions are obviously very good, but they're battling injuries. The Chiefs, just win ugly. They're not all that impressive. And then the Bills, who I think are very impressive, I think don't have the talent like the Eagles have. So that's why I have the Eagles as my number one team. And then we get to the Flyers, who look tremendous, who have been looking tremendous in the last three games. They obviously won three straight. Travis Konechny on Friday against the Rangers was incredible, 2 goals. And then Mitch Kaufmania strikes again in overtime, his third overtime winning goal. I mean, this guy is just incredible, man. And, I said, a couple weeks ago about TK and Mitchkov being the guys of this team. And, I also mentioned that I don't know if that's going to be enough, but at the very least, those two guys give us a shot. And I really hope the front office is watching and seeing that, hey, like, we have something here. Let's not squander it. Let's get guys in here, if we can in the trade deadline. Let's maximize the primes of Travis Konechny and Matvei Michkov. I think these two guys are incredible, and it's imperative that this organization does right and maximizes their talent, because I think they have something here. Um, they're really close in terms of playoffs, in terms of the record. So they're in the mix. They're in the mix, and that's a good spot to be. And it's a much better spot than they were a couple weeks ago. So I really like what I'm seeing from them. Matvei Michkov, he's been incredible, and kudos to him. He's not just a productive player, but he's a guy who wants to smoke late in games, and he wants to be great, and that's great to see. It's one thing if you put up good numbers, but when you put up good numbers and they're consequential in terms of getting wins, that's huge. And he's one of those guys that can do that. So, I hope they do something in the trade deadline, in terms of getting talent, to maximize those two guys. But for the meantime, I like what I'm seeing from this team, and I really like specifically what I'm seeing from Konechny and Mitchkov. I mean, those are your two best guys, no question about it. Just tremendous stuff by those two guys. And before I get into college football, I don't really have anything to say about the Philadelphia Eagles. Um, but I want to let you guys know about our sponsor, Decals by Aaron. Obviously, a lot of people that are associated with Old City Sports are from Delco. They rock Delco gear. They're proud of being from Delco. And if you're like them, and I know a lot of people are proud to be from Delco, Decals by Aaron is the place to go. You can either go to decalsbyaaron.com, or you can go to facebook.com/decals by Aaron to get all your Delco gear. If you're a Delco guy or gal, I suggest you go over the Decals by Aaron. They will hit you up with the best Delco gear. So I would be remiss if I did not talk about one of the biggest upsets, um, if not the biggest upset in the game between Michigan and Ohio State. The Michigan Wolverines somehow, some way, in Columbus against the number 2 Buckeyes, despite being at one point a 23-point dog, win 13-10. Now, if you would have told me that Michigan was going to go into Columbus and put up 13 points and win, I would have thought you're out of your mind. I would have 302'd your ass because I would have thought you were crazy. But that's what happened. I've watched a lot of football games in my life. I've watched a lot of Michigan games in my life. I don't really know how they did this one. I mean, they really, I mean, this was ripe for the taking for the Buckeyes. I mean, Michigan, clearly a down year from the national championship team. They don't have a quarterback. They don't really have that productive of an offense. They have some nice pieces defensively, but their best player, Will Johnson, is hurt. And then offensively, their best player, Colson Loveland, is hurt. And then during the game, they lose Donovan Edwards, who, um, has been a big fixture in this game between Michigan and Ohio State. Obviously, he had those two game sealing runs in 2022 in Columbus as Michigan defeated Ohio State to punch their ticket to the Big Ten championship there. But I just I can't believe it. I was not looking forward to this game at all. It sucks when this game doesn't really have consequences. Like, you're some years it's been top 5, some years top 3, sometimes it's 1 and 2 between Michigan and Ohio State. And there's so much riding on the line. There's a Big Ten championship. There's college football playoff implications. And somehow, some way, this team did it. And, you know, when your quarterback throws for 62 yards and 2 interceptions and you find a way to win, that's incredible. And you could argue that Ohio State lost this game more than Michigan won this game. I mean, I don't know why they didn't try to attack Michigan's secondary without Will Johnson. You have Jeremiah Smith, you have Emeka Ibuka, you have 2 good running backs to attack the edges of Michigan, because Michigan's strength of their team is their interior defensive line, with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. So I don't know what in the world Chip Kelly was dialing up in this game. He just wanted to run right at the wall. That is Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, for whatever reason, and they've had plenty of opportunities. With turnovers from Michigan, they had good field positioning at some points of the game, and Will Howard, their quarterback, just completely choked away that game, as well as their kicker. And it was painful to watch. Obviously, I loved it, but it's sort of like, oof. I mean, how do you blow that game? And when you had all the opportunities to do so, um, just a credible job by Sharon Moore in Michigan to bend and don't break and force them to kick field goals and force Will Howard to make mistakes, and they did that. And credit to Sharon Moore. After the Illinois game, I'll be honest, I was questioning whether or not Sharon Moore was the guy. Being you come off the bye after losing to that Washington team, who I thought they should have beat, and you only put up 7 points after an additional week of preparation against Illinois. And I was like, this is unacceptable. This will not be tolerated at Michigan. And, throughout the year, obviously they lost to Oregon as well. Oregon's obviously the number 1 team in the country, so you can't really lose sleep over that. I mean, Oregon just seems like the real deal Holyfield, and they just don't have the horses to compete. And then not the Illinois game, the Indiana game, they did some nice things, but it's just not where they need to be. And then they had that blowout win against Northwestern, and you had a little bit of confidence going in the game, but you just weren't. You were pessimistic because Ohio State has a lot to play for, where Michigan sort of doesn't. But Sharon Moore gets it, and my faith in him is restored because he clearly understands The goal was to beat Ohio State no matter what, even if the season unravels, even if you just don't have the guys, you don't have the quarterback. And he got those guys playing well, and he got those guys believing. And that when they went into the fourth quarter, I'm like, we might actually have a shot at winning this, given the way Ohio State's playing. Um, and I just, again, you could argue Ohio State lost it more than Michigan won it, and I think that has something to do with Ryan Day's ego. I mean, why wouldn't you just attack the depleted secondary that is Michigan? You clearly had favorable matchups. I don't know why you decided to run at the strength of Michigan's defense. I mean, the crowd was booing, as they got into the red zone because they just were just calling dumb plays. But Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, it couldn't happen to two better guys. Um, I mean, if you can't beat Michigan now, you're not going to beat them anytime soon because they have momentum now. Sharon Moore clearly has something with this team. They clearly resonate with him, and it took late. It was late in the season, but you're starting to see what he's trying to build. He stresses the process, the pursuit, and the standard, and you're starting to see that take shape. Obviously, they got Bryce Underwood, the number one recruit in the country, to flip from LSU, and yesterday they got um, Jordan Young from Clemson to decommit, a four-star recruit, four-star safety out of that committed to Clemson to decommit to come to Michigan, and who knows who's next? Because with NIL and that being a huge thing, and the transfer portal being very prevalent, I think Michigan realizes this year because the last couple of years they didn't really have. I mean, obviously JJ McCarthy was like a five-star recruit, but they didn't really have a team comprised of NIL transfer portal guys, right? These were homegrown talented guys, or homegrown talent that they developed, and Sharon Moore was one of those guys. But they realized that that's not enough, and you have to um, you know venture out and put a premium on NIL and the transfer portal, and they're starting to do that. You don't want to put all your eggs in that basket, a la Ohio State, who had a $20 million roster and they lost to Michigan in their own stadium. I just that's just insane to me. I mean, wow. I mean, if you're not beating Michigan now, you're not beating them ever, in my opinion. Now next year you got to go to the big house. Next year you got to go up against a real quarterback, and who knows what else Michigan's going to get for next year. And as far as Khalil Mullings, just that on that third and six, where it seemed like he was going to lose a couple yards, breaks tackles and takes it to the red zone, which led to the Zavada game-winning kick, 13-10. Incredible stuff of legends that will live in Michigan lore forever. Just an incredible job by him to not quit and to find space and get the first down. Just a tremendous job by him. That's something that will be immortalized forever, beating Ohio State. So that's 4 in a row against the Buckeyes and Crying Ryan. And as far as the end of the game, theatrics with the planting of the flag. Listen, you got a problem with Michigan planting, the flag, at the middle of the field. Beat them on the field. You had 4 quarters to do it. You had $20 million, $20 million in your roster, while Michigan, who is completely inept on offense, their quarterback, great story. I wish nothing but the best for Davis Warren. He is a leukemia survivor. He's not a great quarterback. I mean, he's just not a great quarterback. And when that guy only throws for 62 yards and 2 interceptions, and you still lose that game, that's on you, bro. Like, that's on you. And that's on Ryan Day trying to out tough Michigan. That's just not going to happen. That's the one. You might have a better quarterback, you might have a better defense, you might have better wide receivers. But the one thing you will never have over Michigan is toughness. You're never going to have toughness over Michigan. That's a fact. And Ryan Day's ego got the better of him with the play calling, as well as Chip Kelly, thinking that they could out tough Michigan and thinking that Michigan was just going to roll over because they were a 23-point dog. Well, that's not the case. And Michigan did just enough to win that game. And if you got a problem with them putting the flag in the middle of the field, You had 4 quarters to do something about it. Texas did that to Michigan early on this year in the Big House, and there was no riffraff. There was no, you know, childish antics of using pepper spray. I mean, what the hell are we doing here? And shout out to Jason Avant, former Eagle, Michigan man, taking the flag away from the Ohio State players trying to steal it. Credit to him. He's a real one. I met him early on this year at Chickies and Pete's. Great guy. We talked Michigan football. We talked the Eagles. He's a great dude, great hands, always reliable both on and off the field, and was very reliable there getting the flag, making sure those scumbags from Ohio don't take it, because that's what they are. They're scumbags. I'm sorry. I know there might be some of you that are good people and have nuance, but I just see a lot of garbage pail people in that stadium, and just the way the team acted because they didn't get their way, and despite having a $20 million roster and being 23-point favorites, couldn't get the job done. They acted the way they acted, and I have no problem with what Michigan did. Every college football team does it. It's part of what makes college football great. Um, there's no ill will, there's no animus in doing it. It's just tradition. If Ohio State did it last year or did it next year, which they won't do, God forbid they do it, you're not going to see that. But they're probably going to use that as motivation for next year. But Michigan's going to use that as motivation. I mean, you have to resort to pepper spray because you can only muster 10 points despite having a $20 million roster and being a 23-point favorite. That's your problem. Um, a lot of craziness in college football this week. Oh, by the way, Penn State fans, you're welcome. Um, because Michigan beat Ohio State, you now get a trip to the Big Ten championship. So thank your bull, when you see him. Thank your, thank a Michigan fan, not just me. Thank them all because we were responsible for getting you to the Big Ten championship, and you're welcome. You're very welcome. That's going to do it today. A lot of good stuff. It was a very good weekend with not just the holidays, but the Eagles getting a big win, Michigan upsetting Ohio State, and the Flyers remain red hot. Didn't really touch on the Sixers. Regular season basketball, it is what it is. With Embiid out, there's just not really that interesting, to be honest with you. It's we'll see. We'll see when they get everybody back. Maxey had a good game. I believe it was Saturday, but again, it is what it is. Talk to me in March and I'll get really invested. But if anything else interesting comes from that team, then I'll discuss it. But that